Launching and running a business isn't easy. I've been there and I get it. With the right guidance, you can avoid common pitfalls and build something incredible. I'm Amy Davies, a 3-time business owner, and I'm your new business big sister. Hello and welcome everyone. I am flying solo today and talking about a topic that I think will really help you with your business. It has certainly helped me with mine. It, of course, depends on what type of business you're running, because today we're going to talk about running a webinar. But before I get into that, I've had such an exciting day because I took my dog for a walk. I have a Doberman. And we went for a walk in the woods and we had a huge owl on our path. And it was like so amazing to see it. I can't believe we encountered it. It stayed there for a little bit and kind of looked at us until, of course, my dog started barking. And then it flew away, and it was such an amazing thing that just happened. That's one of the exciting things that can happen to you when you're an entrepreneur, because some of us get to work from home, at least sometimes, and you get to go walk your dog in the middle of the day. So anyway, I thought I'd share that just before we launched into the programming. But anyway, today is all about running a webinar that people actually attend and one that is interesting to your audience. So I want to take you through that step by step. And as always, there is going to be a download that you can grab when you're done the episode that can help take you through these steps, because I know it can be really tough to remember all of this. So fear not, there will be a download as part of one of the takeaways today, so that you can take a look at it all and follow the steps for yourself. So of course, when we're running a webinar, we want to have a topic that is interesting to our audience. And one of the things that has really worked for First 30, my business, is to run sessions that aren't about what we do, because what we do primarily is we help companies when they are laying staff off. And that is not a particularly compelling topic to keep discussing time and again, as you can imagine. So, and we also, of course, do employee onboarding. That is actually a really popular topic and one that we do address from time to time. But of course, you don't want to keep doing the same topic over and over again. So the way that we have been successful is by identifying topics that are interesting to the type of audience who could be our potential clients or clients, and we run sessions on those topics. One example would be succession planning. So we generally speak to HR people, HR leaders and professionals. And we know that succession planning can be a really tough nut to crack. We have great resources for that. They're not of ours, but I had a panel and I had 2 experts in that field join me. And we talked about succession planning and took our participants through step by step, how they can improve their succession planning. And also we talked about technology that could help them do that as well. So that was one example. And when you're coming up with your topic, you want it to be a catchy topic, and you also want it to be one that they get what it is right away. Because we're going to talk about how to invite participants to your webinar to get them to actually attend as well. And when you're inviting them on platforms like LinkedIn, for instance, if the content of what you're talking about isn't right up front in the title, when they get that invite on LinkedIn, it can be really tough for them to see. So remember to have something catchy, but the content piece like right up front, so that they can see exactly what it is they're going to click to join. And then think about the other thing you'll need to do is research on topics that are interesting to your target audience, the people that you would most like to engage with to sell your services, so that you're attracting the type of people who could potentially be your clients. And then once you've identified your topic, it's really great to have, if you can find them, if you can do it on your own, that's great. I find it very hard to run webinars on my own. I have guests and my little bro on the show quite often, and that's because I know that I'm better when I'm interacting. When we have obviously podcasts like this is a step-by-step, so this one's easier to run on my own. But I personally like to have someone else with me because you can play off each other. They come up with new ideas or ask questions that you might not have thought of, and that can really help bring your content to life. So one of the ways that you can do this is identify a panel or another partner who's an expert in the field that you want to discuss. And it's really interesting what happens as a result of that, because there is a bit of a halo effect. I often will run what I call coffee and law sessions with an employment lawyer, because that's a big topic for the audience for first 30s prospects. That's a really important topic for them to understand. And while I'm not I'm becoming more of a legal expert every time I run one of these, but I'm certainly not an employment lawyer. By running these sessions, however, it kind of feels more like I share this expertise. I absolutely don't, but the audience starts to see that you can speak intelligently to this topic and to a range of topics that are important to them. And that makes you a more meaningful resource to them, because if they're looking for an employment lawyer, they know you're going to have a great recommendation. If you're looking for an organization to help with your succession planning, they know that you're going to be able to help them. So you take the conversation with your prospects to a deeper level, because they're not just calling you as a transaction. They might be emailing or calling you just to get your advice and opinion on who they should work with. And I get those types of calls a lot. And I say calls, I mean emails. Who picks up the phone and calls anymore, right? And then you also benefit if you have an audience who are established. You're also getting that benefit from the people who they might attract to your webinar as well. And who knows, they might have a great mailing list. They might share the information about the webinar, and that will bring those folks onto your mailing list as well. And when you get people on your mailing list, and we haven't yet talked about building a mailing list. That's certainly something we are going to cover in a future podcast. But when you get people on your mailing list that have come through a route where they've actually seen you in action, they're going to be a lot more engaged with your content if you've done a great job with your webinar. So you've come up with a great topic. Maybe you have a great guest or a wonderful panel. Now you need to come up with a graphic. Some organizations, so some of you who are listening might have a virtual assistant. This is a great time to engage them, to get them to help you with the graphics. But if you don't worry. There are great ways to do this on your own. I did it when I started my business. So there are platforms like, one is called Venngage, Venngage, that's Venngage. And the other one is called Canva, which is probably the one you've heard of. Venngage is also an excellent platform. And what I love about Venngage is they have templates that you don't see everywhere. Canva is, because it's more widely used, the good thing is that it can act as a kind of not a plug-in, but it can kind of integrate with other technologies maybe more easily if you need that. But Venngage, I love their templates. So that's the one that First 30 uses, and that's the one I personally recommend. But of course, for this show, all of our graphics are done by our amazing production company that we're working with called Storyfora. So I don't want to make you think that we were at all able to create graphics at that level from these platforms, but you can still make really good posters for your webinars. So what you want to do is you want to go in, get an account with either Venngage or Canva, go in, put in your brand colors, and create a template for your webinars. And if you're going to regularly run webinars, I would make the recommendation you use a similar template. It doesn't have to be the same color every time, but certain features that look the same on each template, because that is going to help make it more recognizable that it's you. If you create a new template every single time that looks completely different from the last one, people are going to start to wonder, they're not going to be able to identify that it's you right away and your brand right away. So I recommend use a similar base for each one. maybe a different color in the background sometimes. We do that from time to time. And then make sure you have your picture, the picture of your guests. And you want this process to be repeatable. If it's something you plan to continue doing, you can have great success with your business from webinars. And we're going to talk about how to promote your business as part of the webinar you're running. Because while it is great to run webinars, it's a great way to connect with your audience. You also have products and services to sell. So we're going to talk about when to introduce those as part of your webinar process when you are starting the webinar and starting to engage with your audience. So when you're dealing with images, one more little thing on images is there's some images that are better quality, but they don't always work on platforms like a Zoom if you're running your webinar on Zoom. So you want to make sure that you have some that are really high quality when you download them and some that are smaller files that will actually work. So you're going to learn the different file types that you need. And then you want to make sure that you have a register here button on the poster, because if you put that on a platform like Zoom, what will happen is when it comes up and it's put on social media, people will be able to click on that picture. So having a register here is a really good idea for that. All right. So at First 30, we actually work with our producer. Our producer uses a platform called Riverside, which we really like to produce the content that you're seeing today. Zoom has actually just upgraded all of its software, so it actually is getting better and better every day. That is what First 30 uses for webinars. I'm sure there's other webinar providers out there, and I'm sure some of them are great. So you can check out what works for you, what works for your budget. We've had a lot of success with Zoom. So when we set up on Zoom, we need to put in our title, we need to put in our graphic, and of course we need the smaller graphic that's not as large a file to put into Zoom. We put our branding in there, and then we put a little write-up in. And then we make sure that there's the option to register for the webinar. You have to put that in. Otherwise, people don't have to register. The process isn't what you want it to be for a webinar of the type you're trying to run. You want to make sure that when they go to register, that there's certain things that they have to fill in. So you want their first name, their last name. We personally want their company name and their job title. They can put NA in that, not applicable or whatever they want when they're filling out the form. But it really helps us to capture that information because we use an integration called Zapier. If you haven't heard of it, you might want to look it up. Depending on where you store your mailing list, you want that as soon as someone comes into a webinar, you want them to be part of your mailing list. And so these integrated technologies will allow those to Zoom and your ConvertKit or Constant Contact. You want it to automatically go onto your mailing list, and having that integration will allow you to do that. That's really important because you don't want to lose the email addresses from people who have joined your webinar. And then when they're on there, it doesn't really help you to have their name and a Gmail account, right? You really want to know where they work and what they do. So that's how we work it out at First 30. It really helps us stay organized. There are more things that I would really like to know about the people who are joining us. For instance, I would love to know which country they're coming to us from. But that is not always possible. It's just too much information to ask someone to fill out at one time. So you don't get quite as much detail as you might like. Fortunately, a lot of these platforms, they will work out for you where to put, they'll actually be able to pull where that person's IP address is coming from. So you should be able to know at least what country they're in. Like many entrepreneurs, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So when I started Your New Business Big Sister podcast, I knew that I had to work with a fantastic production company, and I chose Story4. And here's why. They make everything sound and look amazing. And I'm so happy working with them. They do all kinds of great content, video and otherwise. So if you're looking to up your game as an entrepreneur, check out Story4. That's www.storyfora.com. And if you want to get in touch with them, email info@storyfora.com, and your podcast can look as good as mine. So then we want to go and invite relevant members of our network. We do that at First 30 by, first of all, we send it out to our mailing list. Mailing lists are critical to running a successful business. So again, this is something we're going to continue to talk about over time on this podcast. So let's assume that you have at least a small mailing list. We want to send out an invite to them. When we send out these invites, we really want them to look and feel like our brand. And again, I will talk about branding another time, but you want to choose the similar font, the color of the font. You want to have your poster in that email, but you want to have them be able to register by, if you have a click here, and through an image. You can't just do it through an image. And the reason for that is because you've had this experience likely where you'll get an email and you'll have to click on the link to register or click on the image. But a lot of platforms will make you right click to even show the images in the first place. So the last thing you want is for people not to be able to find out where to click to join. So always have a word that is live linked in your email or a sentence that's live linked so that they can join, go to the registration page and actually sign up for your webinar. That will make sure it's in their calendar. That's really important because if it's not in people's calendar, they are very unlikely to put it there themselves and then to remember when your webinar occurs. Prepare yourself for the fact that there's going to be a lot of attrition. Because if you're running a free event, people aren't all that committed to coming to it, right? So when we run our webinars, depending on the topic, we expect around 50% attrition. And what that means is only 50% of the people who are registered are going to show up. But we know this. The good news is one of the pieces of the process that we're going to talk about is sending them the replay from the session. So that's going to bring in a whole bunch more people who couldn't actually make it. They'll be enticed enough perhaps to go and even look through the replay. We have a lot of views of our replays as well. So you make sure you have a process that includes sending that to people. All right, so you're going to create, as well as send it out through your mailing list. If you're a B2B business, you will want to also create a LinkedIn invite, right? So it's really easy to create an event on LinkedIn. I will warn you that with the graphics, of course, the poster that you create for your webinar that goes on Zoom is not the right dimensions for LinkedIn. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there for you. So what you want to do is maybe there is a template that is for LinkedIn events. I have not found it yet. So you want to set one up and then save it as a template for future. So you know exactly the dimensions that you're going to need for your LinkedIn image as well. So on LinkedIn, you're going to want to put in your Zoom link in there if you're using Zoom. You're going to want to put in your poster and a little write-up. Really, you want to be focused on the key takeaways. What is your audience going to leave having learned as a result of coming to your session? And then who are the guest speakers that might be joining you? And then there is a bit of a tedious process that follows that. And if you have a VA, maybe they can help you with this too. You want to start inviting your network. And LinkedIn does not make this easy. And I understand why, because they don't want everyone to be blasted every day with like hundreds of invites to people's webinars. So it's not like a one click, I invite everyone who has HR in their title. You actually have to go one by one and click on the people who you want to invite to your webinar. When you do it, you're going to say, oh my gosh, Amy was right. This is a very tedious process, and it is. But when you're starting out, sometimes we have to do these really tough things, like really boring, repetitive tasks. And that's part of being a business owner. So it's not easy, but if you can migrate people from your LinkedIn and get them to actively engage with your brand in these sessions, we have seen it turn around our business. And that's why I think this topic is so important. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it today. So Zoom will do it, all of the reminders for you. You can set that up in the invitation section in Zoom. I'm sure there's a ton of how-tos that you can watch on YouTube to help you learn how to set up your Zoom. I'm sure Zoom also has training videos that are super simple because it is a pretty intuitive and easy process to make sure that you're all set up and that you have the reminders going out to your audience. So you certainly want those because people, again, we will forget, especially if it's not something super important for them to learn. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. So keep that in mind. And you can also, LinkedIn kind of forces you to create a post if you've created the event. So you'll be sending that out, but you're not going to get very much reaction from putting up a post on LinkedIn. So don't let that get you down. You really have to take that next step of sending out individual invites. There are times, for one of our webinars, we had about 600 people on LinkedIn indicate that they were coming to the webinar. We actually had 400 actually come to Zoom, not all from LinkedIn, some were from our mailing list. And then we had about 200 that showed up for our webinar. And that is a good example of when we did all the hard work. We did everything we needed to do, and we got 200 people actually attended, and then many, many more who watched the replay. So that can be a really great way to build up your mailing list with engaged participants in it. Okay, so we talked about making sure that all of these participants are loaded into whatever CRM you're using, whether it be ConvertKit, whether it be ActiveCampaign, whatnot. And then you want to set up a process for the invites on your CRM. So when we run webinars at First 30, the first thing we do is we send out a "you're invited" and then the topic, and then we have a detailed explanation of what the topic is, what the learning outcomes are. We don't say learning outcomes, but you know what I mean. You can phrase it in a way that works for you. You can also get ChatGPT to help you. I don't ever like to use ChatGPT to create an invite for me. What I like to do is I write the invite and then I will get ChatGPT's help in refining it. We don't want to sound like a chat box when we're messaging people. We want our character in it. If you have a paid account with ChatGPT, you can also get it to learn your voice, which I find really helpful because we have a distinctive voice at First 30, and I want to make sure that we're consistent with that voice, and that it sounds like me. It sounds like it's coming from me because it is coming from me, but it's natural to get a little help because you don't want to send anything that has typos in it. You want to make sure all your links are working. You want to check and recheck that email. And you can also personalize it. So all of these platforms that I'm talking about, whether it's ActiveCampaign, Kit, or Constant Contact, they all have the option to put a personalized tag in. So you can automatically put in the person who's receiving the email will have their first name, like "Hi, Amy," and so forth. So you want to set up your email to go out to invite people to the webinar. Then you want to send a reminder the week before the webinar starts. So generally speaking, we'll send the first invite out about 3 weeks before the webinar, and then we'll send another one the week of. So if it's on a Wednesday, we'll send a note out on Monday and we'll say "last chance." And they know that it's the absolute last opportunity that they're going to have to join that webinar. And we put in the details of the webinar again for them to register. And it's surprising how many people you get that very last week. And the people who sign up the last week are actually the ones that are most likely to actually show up. So it's a really good practice to get into. So you've sent your first email, you've sent your reminder, Zoom is helping you remind all of the people who have already agreed to attend, and then you run your webinar and it's amazing. But when you're running your webinar, this is your opportunity to do a little bit of a pitch. We don't do a long pitch at the beginning of the webinar. We come in, we have that's the other thing you want to think about is how do you want people to feel when they're in your webinar? For us, we want it to be content rich, but we want it to be conversational as well. And that's why I like to have a guest. Often I have a coffee in my hand or a tea and we'll be, kind of chatting like friends, and we'll ask people how the weather is, or we'll talk about something like a world event that's happening, or it was recently World Kindness Day, and we talked about the fact that it was World Kindness Day that week and what that meant. And then we go into the webinar. But before we get into the content, I always remind people, I'm Amy Davies, the CEO of First 30. Here's what First 30 does. And then we have a few slides about First 30. You want to get that promotion at the beginning of your webinar, because halfway through at the 30-minute mark, people are going to drop off because they have, if you're a B2B business, they're going to have meetings. So you're going to lose part of your audience at the 30-minute mark. And then you're going to lose some of your audience towards the end because they're like, oh, I can feel they're wrapping up. I'm going. We still do a little bit of a sales pitch at the end. And we share our pricing, we share our programs, and we give them options to contact us. While I am doing all of that, I have one of my team members in the chat, and they are adding my email address to the chat. They're adding a link to book meetings with me. They're including links to brochures that we have that folks can download who are listening. So we're having that active engagement. We also always promote the next session we're running in the session that we have going on. And my team member will have the link for that next session in the chat. And so that she puts it in that chat. And it is a really great process that works for us very, very well. And it means that we have a guaranteed audience for our next webinar, as well as the audience that we have. Because the people who are already at your webinar are going to be far more likely to want to engage with more of your content if you've done a really good job. So don't be shy about making that sales pitch. Make it really short and succinct. Share the key details, have great graphics to go with it, and then move into your content. If you have never run a webinar before, I will warn you, it can be very nerve-wracking the very first time you do it. So make sure that you set yourself up for success by going and doing a trial run, having a friend join, and get yourself kind of practice. You don't want to feel too rehearsed. And of course, if you have a guest, you're probably not going to rehearse the whole thing with them beforehand. I think that would be a waste of time. But if you have specific questions for them, having slides, I find really helps. Slides aren't always critical, but for me, they create good breadcrumbs. So it helps remind me of what I was going to talk about. So then what you want to do is maybe you want to create after your webinar is done, you want to then create another email to go out to your audience. So if you're at a First 30 webinar, as I'm talking through the last few slides, I'm going to say, you know what? You're going to get an email after this with all of the information, all of the follow-ups we discussed, our brochure, information about our services, and a way to reach out to me, like book a meeting with me. And within a couple hours after that webinar is finished, we've recorded the webinar the whole time. That's another thing you want to make sure in Zoom that you've set up, or whatever platform you're using. You want to make sure that you're recording the webinar and then that you can send it out to people, because you want the next week to be able to send them the replay. But before that, you're sending them the thanks for joining. You have all of the follow-ups that you mentioned, any new news that you announce. You can set that email up even before the webinar and make it go out, like set the timer or schedule it so it can go out about an hour after your webinar is finished. So that will go out, and then you promise people that in that session, and actually everyone always asks this at the beginning of the webinar, is it being recorded? So you want to answer that right away. Yes, if it is being recorded, yes, it is. And then they're going to want to know when they're going to get the recording. We usually wait about 5 business days to send it out. We want people to come to the session, so there's a motivation if they want the information right away. And then we also want another touch point with them the week after. So that's typically when and you have to set it all up. You have to get your download finished. You have to put it up on another platform, get all the links ready to go. So it takes a little time to get it all set up. So give yourself about 5 business days at least to do that. And then, so you're going to send out your email after the webinar is over, and you're going to remind people of how to get a hold of you, what services you offer. You don't want it to be too long, just be very clear, and then remind them that they'll be getting the replay the next week. The next week, you have to be reliable. right? Because people are going to work with you. They want to know you're reliable. And that's why we have a process that we follow every time. And I had people say to me, Amy, I love coming to your webinars. And I always know that right away I'm going to get the thank you. And then the next week I'm going to get the replay. So people pay attention to these types of things. So you're going to send out the follow-up, then you're going to send out the replay the next week. So how do you get your replay together? Well, you've hit record on Zoom. So Zoom's going to send you the file once the webinar is finished. It can take a couple hours sometimes. And then once you have that, you may want to do a little edit, like at the beginning and the end, because sometimes we're, staring awkwardly into the screen, smiling for a long period while we're trying to click end the webinar. So we'll take that out, and then but I will tell you that people rarely watch the replays right to the very end anyway, so you're probably okay with that. But you want to put it on, we put ours on YouTube, and then we put in the link the next week. We have our email all set up so that they can go watch it on YouTube. We have the write-up in there, we have the title, we put it together a thumbnail picture that's the same, very similar to the poster we created for it with the title, so everyone knows exactly what they're looking at, and it's nicely organized on our YouTube channel. And then all of that goes out, and then you have a really engaged audience. And so don't forget about your audience on LinkedIn either. Again, this is a hard work, but we get hundreds of people signing up for our webinars on LinkedIn, and only a fraction of those are going to be on our mailing list. So what you can do is through whatever platform you're using as your email list, like we use ActiveCampaign right now. So you can set up a landing page on ActiveCampaign. They have to fill in their details in order to access the replay because they're not on your mailing list yet. So they haven't got that replay message. So now they're going to have to click on the link, fill in their details, and voila, they are on your mailing list now. So that is another great way to get people on your mailing list. But it does require you going through LinkedIn, all of the people that have accepted your invite, which you can see kind of in the back end, and you can email them each one by one. We just cut and paste. We put, hi Amy, thanks for joining our webinar. In case you missed it or want to see it again, here's the link to the replay. Have a great day. That's it. We're not really going to be hard selling as part of this process because we want to welcome people into our community. We want to make them feel comfortable, and we want to feel safe to them, and we want to be a trusted resource. The best way to build a strong business over time is to become that trusted resource, someone I can actually talk to that isn't always going to be trying to pitch me. There's going to be little pitches worked in throughout, but it's okay. It's going to take time to build your business. We've had people come to our webinars and it's taken 2 years for them to become a client. And we've got some of our very best clients that way, but it does require patience. So that I love to have a big sister bonus at the end of every episode. And today it's don't be boring. It's hard when you're running a webinar. I even find it hard running a podcast on my own. I just thought today it was important because I wanted to take you through step by step and not get distracted and go down rabbit holes, because this is an important process, one that has done amazing things for our business by following it. But once people get to your webinar, you want them to feel engaged with the content. So how do we avoid that boring factor and sound exciting and interesting? Watch other webinars and see what you like and dislike about them. Find people that you have great chemistry with, like Joel. When he joins these podcasts, I love talking to Joel. He's so much fun, and it makes it easy to be more interesting and fun and creative and give better advice. So think about who those people are for you. Start running your webinars with people who feel very safe to you, who you already feel you have that connection with, before you start inviting guests that you don't know. And when you invite guests, really research them, understand what their expertise is, understand if they're comfortable on camera, if they're comfortable as part of presenting in a webinar, and then set them up for success by preparing the questions you're going to ask and send those to them in advance. This helps you create that great atmosphere. The other thing that you want to do that we found works very well is we chat. the whole time with our audience. We get a ton of questions in the chat for some topics, and we're responding and we're laughing with them. And if the other person is speaking, sometimes I can go in and be included in the chat as well. So find ways to make it fun and engaging for them and for your audience. And then you might want to have someone in the audience who's well-known enough to you that you can get them to ask a question to get that ball rolling. Because you know what it's like. Sometimes we're like, hey, does anyone have any questions? And it's quiet. And then one person asks a question, and then all of a sudden, everyone is, putting up their hand and asking questions and contributing to the chat and contributing to the Q&A. So sometimes it just takes that one initial question to give people the confidence and the time to think. So the other thing you can do is warn them right from the very beginning. Hey, we're taking questions. Don't be shy to ask them throughout. We'll even have a Q&A at the end as well. So get thinking about your questions now. You can put them, there's a little Q&A feature in Zoom. You can put them in the Q&A. So all of these things should help you if you have a great topic, you have a great process, you have strong graphics, and then you come with wonderful content, beautiful slides. We didn't really talk about the slide deck, but it's really important that your slide deck look great. You know what? I'm going to do another podcast just on how to create a really great slide deck. First 30 is kind of known for we're not too crazy with them, but they look really, really good. And that can contribute to the overall confidence in your brand. So I leave you with that. You will have the takeaway. I want to thank a special thanks to Storyfora for all of the hard work they do as our sponsors and our producers. They're part of what make our brand look amazing. So I'm so grateful to them. And I wish you so much luck running your first webinar.